Today we are going to study one of the most famous love poems in English literature, Sonnet 18, written by William Shakespeare. This poem begins with the well-known line, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" And it has remained one of the most admired poems for centuries because of its beautiful language and its powerful idea about love and immortality. In this poem, Shakespeare praises the beauty of the beloved and argues that natural beauty, like summer, fades with time, but the beauty described in poetry can live forever. Through this sonnet, Shakespeare shows the power of poetry to preserve beauty and memory beyond the limits of time and death. As we go through this presentation, we will carefully examine the poem's structure, themes, imagery, poetic devices, and deeper meanings so that we can clearly understand why Sonnet 18 is considered one of the greatest sonnets ever written. Let's begin with the poet's introduction. In order to understand the greatness of William Shakespeare, it is important to know something about his life and background. William Shakespeare was born on the 23rd of April 1564 in Stratford-upon-Avon, England. He was born into a respectable middle-class family. His father, John Shakespeare, worked as a glovemaker and was also involved in local politics and public affairs. His mother, Mary Arden, came from a well-known and comparatively wealthy farming family. Because of this background, Shakespeare grew up in a social environment where he could observe different aspects of human life, which later influenced his literary works. Shakespeare most likely received his education at the King's New School in Stratford. At this grammar school he studied subjects such as Latin literature, rhetoric, and classical authors like Ovid, Seneca, and Virgil. This classical education had a strong influence on his later writing, especially his poetry and plays. In 1582, when Shakespeare was about 18 years old, he married Anne Hathaway, who was 8 years older than him. The couple had 3 children. Their first child was Susanna, and later they had twins named Hamnet and Judith. Unfortunately, Hamnet died at a young age, which some scholars believe may have influenced the emotional depth found in Shakespeare's later tragedies. After some years in Stratford, Shakespeare moved to London, where his literary career truly began. In London he worked not only as a playwright, but also as an actor and a shareholder in a theatre company. This involvement in the theatre world helped him gain both artistic experience and financial success. Shakespeare was closely associated with the famous theatre company Lord Chamberlain's Men, which later became known as King's Men after the accession of King James I to the English throne. This company performed many of Shakespeare's plays and played an important role in establishing his reputation as one of the greatest writers in English literature. Now let us look at the remarkable literary contribution of William Shakespeare, who is widely regarded as one of the greatest writers in the history of English literature. Shakespeare's contribution to literature is extraordinary. He wrote around 39 plays, 154 sonnets, and several narrative poems. His works cover a wide range of human experiences such as love, ambition, jealousy, power, betrayal, and the complexities of human nature. Because of this deep understanding of human emotions, his works remain relevant even today. Shakespeare's plays are usually divided into 4 major genres: tragedies, comedies, histories, and romances. First, his tragedies deal with serious themes such as ambition, revenge, jealousy, and moral conflict. Some of his greatest tragedies include Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth. These plays explore the downfall of powerful characters due to their own weaknesses or tragic flaws. Second, Shakespeare wrote many comedies, which focus on love, misunderstanding, wit, and happy endings. Famous examples include As You Like It, Twelfth Night, and Much Ado About Nothing. These plays often contain humorous situations, mistaken identities, and joyful reunions. Third, Shakespeare also wrote history plays, which dramatize the lives of English kings and important historical events. Some well-known examples are Richard III, Henry IV, and Henry V. These plays combine historical facts with dramatic storytelling. Finally, Shakespeare's later works are often called romances or tragicomedies. These plays mix elements of tragedy and comedy and often focus on themes of forgiveness and reconciliation. Important examples include The Tempest and The Winter's Tale. After a long and highly successful career, Shakespeare returned to his hometown Stratford. He died on the 23rd of April 1616 at the age of 52. Even after more than 4 centuries, his works continue to influence literature, theatre, and culture all over the world. Now let us understand the sonnet tradition of William Shakespeare, which forms an important part of his literary achievement. Shakespeare wrote a total of 154 sonnets, and these poems were first published together in the year 1609. The Shakespearean sonnets are known for the deep exploration of themes such as love, beauty, time, mortality, and the power of poetry. Unlike many earlier sonnets that focused only on romantic love, Shakespeare's sonnets often deal with complex emotional and philosophical ideas. Scholars usually divide Shakespeare's sonnets into 3 main groups based on their subject and the person to whom they are addressed. The first and largest group is known as the Fair Youth Sonnets, which includes sonnets 1 to 126. These sonnets are addressed to a young man of great beauty and charm. In these poems, Shakespeare reflects on themes such as youth, beauty, friendship, admiration, the passage of time, and the desire to preserve beauty forever. The poet often argues that beauty fades with time but can be made immortal through poetry. The second group is called the Dark Lady Sonnets, which includes sonnets 127 to 152. These poems are addressed to a mysterious woman often described as the Dark Lady. Unlike the idealized love poetry of earlier traditions, these sonnets present a more complicated relationship involving passion, desire, jealousy, betrayal, and moral conflict. The final 2 sonnets, sonnets 153 and 154, are sometimes called the Greek or mythological sonnets. These poems draw on classical mythology, particularly references to Cupid and themes related to love and desire. It is important to note that Sonnet 18, the poem we are studying today, belongs to the Fair Youth sequence. In this sonnet, Shakespeare celebrates the beauty of the beloved and argues that this beauty will live forever through the power of poetry. Now let us move to the introduction of Sonnet 18, one of the most celebrated poems written by William Shakespeare. Sonnet 18 is widely regarded as one of the most famous love poems in English literature. It is admired not only for its beautiful language but also for its powerful idea about the relationship between beauty, time, and poetry. The poem begins with the well-known line, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" This opening line immediately introduces the central comparison that forms the foundation of the poem. In this sonnet, the poet considers whether it is appropriate to compare the beloved person to a summer's day. At first, summer might seem like the perfect symbol of beauty because it represents warmth, brightness, and pleasant weather. However, as the poem develops, Shakespeare explains that summer is not perfect. Summer can be too hot, sometimes cloudy, and it lasts only for a short period of time. Through this comparison, Shakespeare arrives at the central idea of the poem. He argues that the beauty of the beloved is greater and more lasting than the beauty of summer. While summer eventually fades and changes, the beauty of the beloved will never disappear. The reason for this immortality is poetry itself. Shakespeare confidently declares that the beloved's beauty will live forever in the lines of this poem. As long as people continue to read the poem, the beloved's beauty will remain alive in human memory. Thus, the poem not only praises the beloved but also celebrates the power of poetry to defeat time and death. Let me read the sonnet. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owes it, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou grouse it. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Now let us examine the structure of Sonnet 18 written by William Shakespeare. Understanding the structure of the poem helps us clearly see how Shakespeare develops his central idea step by step. This poem follows the traditional Shakespearean sonnet structure. A Shakespearean sonnet consists of 14 lines, and each line is written in iambic pentameter. Iambic pentameter means that every line contains 10 syllables arranged in a pattern of unstressed and stressed syllables, creating a smooth and rhythmic flow that is characteristic of Shakespeare's poetry. Another important feature of the Shakespearean sonnet is its rhyme scheme. In this form, the poem follows the pattern ABAB, CDCD, EFEF, GG. This means the poem is divided into 3 quatrains followed by a final rhyming couplet. The first quatrain, which includes lines 1 to 4, introduces the main comparison in the poem. Here the poet wonders whether he should compare the beloved to a summer's day and then suggests that the beloved is actually more beautiful and more gentle than summer. The second quatrain, consisting of lines 5 to 8, focuses on the imperfections of summer. Shakespeare explains that summer can be too hot, sometimes cloudy, and it lasts only for a short time. Through these examples, he shows that natural beauty is temporary and unstable. The third quatrain, which includes lines 9 to 12, presents the central turning point of the poem. At this stage, the poet declares that the beloved's beauty will never fade. Unlike summer, the beloved's beauty will remain eternal because it will live in the lines of poetry. Finally, the poem ends with a rhyming couplet in lines 13 and 14. In this powerful conclusion, Shakespeare states that as long as human beings continue to live and read, the poem will survive, and through this poem the beloved's beauty will remain immortal. Now let us carefully analyze the first quatrain of Sonnet 18, written by William Shakespeare. These first 4 lines introduce the central comparison of the poem and establish the poet's argument. The poem begins with the famous line, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" This opening line is written in the form of a rhetorical question. The poet is not truly asking for an answer. Instead, he is introducing the idea of comparison. In traditional love poetry, especially during the Renaissance period, poets often compared the beauty of the beloved to elements of nature such as flowers, the sun, or the seasons. Among these symbols, summer was usually considered the most perfect season because it represents warmth, brightness, growth, and natural beauty. By raising this question, Shakespeare prepares the reader for a comparison between the beloved and one of the most beautiful aspects of nature. However, in the very next line the poet immediately changes the direction of the comparison. He states, "Thou art more lovely and more temperate." Here the poet claims that the beloved is actually more beautiful and more balanced than a summer day. The word, lovely, refers to physical beauty and attractiveness, while the word, temperate, suggests moderation, calmness, and pleasantness. Summer can sometimes be extreme or uncomfortable, but the beloved possesses a kind of beauty that is steady, gentle, and perfectly balanced. This line already suggests that the beloved surpasses nature itself. In the third line, "Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May," the poet begins to explain why summer is not as perfect as it might seem. Early summer begins in May, when flowers and buds are still delicate and new. These young flowers are described as darling buds, which emphasizes their beauty and fragility. However, strong and rough winds can shake these buds and even damage them. Through this image, Shakespeare shows that nature is unstable and unpredictable. Even the most beautiful flowers can be destroyed by sudden changes in weather. The fourth line continues this idea, "And summer's lease hath all too short a date." Here Shakespeare uses a metaphor taken from legal language. The word, lease, refers to a contract that allows someone to use property for a limited period of time. By describing summer as having a lease, the poet suggests that the season exists only for a short and temporary duration. Just like a lease eventually expires, summer also comes to an end very quickly. Its beauty cannot last forever. Together, these 4 lines establish the foundation of the poem's argument. Shakespeare first introduces the idea of comparing the beloved to summer, but then he shows that summer is actually imperfect and temporary. By highlighting the flaws of summer, The poet prepares the reader for the later claim that the beloved's beauty is far more lasting and ultimately immortal. Now let us move to the second quatrain of Sonnet 18, written by William Shakespeare. In these lines, Shakespeare continues his argument by explaining the imperfections of summer and the temporary nature of beauty in the natural world. The first line of this section says, "Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines." In this line, the poet refers to the sun using the metaphor, the eye of heaven. The sun is imagined as the bright eye of the sky that watches over the earth. However, Shakespeare points out that the sun does not always provide pleasant warmth. Sometimes it shines too intensely, producing extreme heat that can be uncomfortable or even harmful. Instead of being perfectly pleasant, summer can therefore become oppressive and excessive. The next line states, "And often is his gold complexion dimmed." Here Shakespeare continues to describe the sun using human characteristics. The phrase, gold complexion, refers to the golden brightness of sunlight. However, the poet explains that this golden brightness is often dimmed or weakened, usually by clouds or changing weather conditions. This means that the sun, which appears powerful and radiant, cannot maintain its brightness consistently. Through this observation, Shakespeare shows that even the most powerful natural elements are subject to change and imperfection. In the seventh line, "And every fair from fair sometime declines," Shakespeare moves from discussing summer specifically to making a universal statement about beauty. The word fair here means beautiful or attractive. Shakespeare explains that every beautiful thing eventually loses its beauty. Over time, youth fades, flowers wither, and even the brightest natural scenes begin to decline. This line introduces the broader theme of the inevitable passage of time, which affects all living things. The final line of this quatrain says, "By chance or nature's changing course untrimmed." In this line, Shakespeare explains why beauty declines. Sometimes beauty is destroyed by chance, meaning unexpected events such as storms, illness, accidents, or sudden changes. At other times, beauty fades through nature's natural process, which refers to aging and the continuous movement of time. The phrase, "nature's changing course," emphasizes that change is an unavoidable part of the natural world. Taken together, these four lines strengthen Shakespeare's central argument. The poet demonstrates that nature itself is unstable and temporary. The sun can be too hot, its brightness can fade, and all beauty eventually declines due to time or chance. By highlighting these weaknesses in nature, Shakespeare prepares the reader for the important contrast that appears in the next part of the poem, where he will claim that the beloved's beauty is not subject to these limitations.